listening to the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast, a podcast in sisterhood for female entrepreneurs that serves up savvy, actionable marketing advice and interviews with creative business owners who are in the trenches, building their businesses as we speak. The Marketing in Yoga Pants community is for you, the girl on her couch, in her yoga pants, top knot tight, hunched over her MacBook, trying her hardest to get the word out about her business. So in the name of supporting each other while supporting ourselves, bringing community, sound marketing advice, coffee, chocolate, and wine together for you, yoga pants wearing business owner, in a world where followers mean nothing, but paying customers mean the world, join us on this week's podcast episode and in our private Facebook group where you'll meet your soul sisters and build your business in yoga pants. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast. I'm Brit, and I'm here today with Joanna Platt, life and relationship coach at joanna-platt.com. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jo.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yes. Now, if you've listened through season 1 of the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast, you know that I've already interviewed Jo. Her podcast is number 9. Is that right? Yes, number 9. One of the biggest hits so far on the podcast. And now I've brought Jo back for a different type of episode. This one is not going to be like the ones you're used to. I'm not going to be taking Jo through the regular flow of questions because we've already done that. If you missed it, again, episode 9. But instead, we're actually going to deep dive into a topic that she knows a ton about and that I think all of us, including me, could benefit from understanding a bit better. So, without further ado, Jo, you want to tell our listeners what we're talking about today?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to share this topic.
Me
It's one
too.
of my favorite topics, and it's been personally helpful in my life. It's helped my husband a ton in his life. It's helped us in our marriage. And I think that it comes up a lot in business, and that is your inner critic.
Yes.
And so, of course, I love this because your inner critic is a relationship, and I am fascinated by relationships and relationship coaching. So, so the inner critic is, pretty self-explanatory, but it's the voice within you that says, it's like a little worrier. It's designed to keep you safe. It's also your reptilian brain. So like way back, like in evolution, it's your reptilian brain. This was the part of our brain that would make us run from a tiger, that could sense threats and in an instant know what to do and do fight, flight, freeze to keep us safe, to get us away from the danger. But we don't really need that in the same way that we needed it back then. And so it doesn't really know what danger is. So for me, it'll come up a lot. It comes up a lot in personal relationships. It also comes up in business too, but it'll be like, it's that voice in your head that's like, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Like I'll wake up the morning after like a social outing and like replay every single thing that happened the night before. And I this happened to me this weekend actually. And it was like, it's almost like it's going through like an index card box, like looking at every single thing that I said and being like, are any of these dangerous?
Yes.
And then it wants to flag them and like, be like, danger, shouldn't have said that thing.
Yes.
And so that's in a nutshell what the inner critic is.
Okay.
It's like, Mayday, don't say that. Don't do that thing. There's danger ahead. And it wants to like pull you back.
Right.
Like a little crossing guard almost.
Right.
But it doesn't really know what danger is.
And to highlight the reason you and I are talking about this right now is, just like you said, your inner critic is there, but you yourself have a relationship with your inner critic. Your inner critic isn't necessarily you, right? It's just like a part of you. So you have a relationship with that part of you, and you are a relationship coach. And so whether you have a relationship with yourself, you have a relationship with your business, and within your business, you have, I don't know. I mean, we've talked about it, a million different relationships going on. So, and one of those big ones, one of those ones that honestly, I would go as far as to say probably one of the most important relationships that you have in life and in business.
Absolutely.
That's going to lead to your success or quote unquote failure or mistakes or learning experiences. I think it's so huge. It comes in so many different ways. So with that tee up of that idea, I want to bring in the story of how we got on this subject. Okay. So let's go back. You guys know that I launched the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast on June 1st, 2017, which wasn't that long ago at the time of this recording. And it was awesome. Like, I had no idea how it was going to go, but I just knew that I needed to do it. I truly had an internal drive. I just knew that it was on my heart to launch something like this. So I did it. And the week following the launch was great. It wasn't overly celebratory. I struggle to celebrate big wins because my mind is usually on the next thing that needs to be done. But I found myself about a week and a half after the launch, a launch that, to I think most people's standards, went really super well and was done semi-well, as far as standards go. But a week and a half after I launched, I had about 3 days straight of waking up from awful nightmares, like super bad nightmares. And I was waking up in this frantic state, just like you were describing how you wake up after like a social event thinking about like, what did I say and how did I act? And maybe I shouldn't have done that. I was waking up and thinking all sorts of just weird, scared, fearful thoughts about not just about business, but about my other relationships in my life, about life in general. It was the craziest thing. And I don't tend to feel those thoughts. I don't tend to feel overwhelmingly negative thoughts. So this was a problem for me. Like, as soon as they started happening, I was like, no, this is not cool. I have to figure out the root cause of this. And I believe I posted about it. It was either an Instagram post or in one of our Facebook groups. I can't quite remember. I just kind of like let out how I was feeling. Like, I'm like, oh, there's just so many doubts. This doubtful imposter syndrome thing coming into my life right now. And you commented and you were like, sounds like a little bit of inner critic, Brit. And of course, we've known each other for a while now. We work together as well. And so it seems like every time we get on the phone, like, you just totally know me, like, without me saying it. And so when you commented to that, and I thought, yeah, Jo is totally right. Of course she's right, because she is so good at figuring people out like this. But you were totally right on that. And so that helped, just identifying it as my inner critic. And then I went through a process of figuring out, okay, how did I let this in? When I don't usually feel this way, I don't usually deal with my inner critic, at least not this amplified. And so why is it happening? So that's a little background story of why we're talking about this right now. Can you take me to, as business owners, what do we need to know about this relationship with an inner critic? Just some basic things so we know how to handle it when it pops up, because it's going to come up. And often, in my experience, it comes out of absolutely nowhere. So what do we need to know about this thing?
Well, in business, it's important to know that your inner critic comes up when you're up leveling.
Mm-hmm.
When you're putting yourself out there in a more vulnerable way.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine you're kind of going like higher and higher up a mountain. There's further to fall.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more visible you are and the more you like up level in business, there's further that you can fall. And so your inner critic is going to say, is like, this has actually been happening to me this week as we move closer and closer to my course launch.
Yes.
It is terrible. But it is just like my inner critic is like scurrying around, like, on high alert,
Mm-hmm.
like there could be danger, and so it's just looking for everything. And you're right. I'm up leveling in one area of my life, but it's also looking for things elsewhere, like in friendships and family. And, so it's on high alert for all of the potential ways that you could be in danger and like looking for all of them.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I think that's the big one. And as creative entrepreneurs, you're really putting out your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really vulnerable. I don't have kids yet. But I imagine that becoming a mom has got to be, or just a parent in general, has got to be one of the biggest triggers of inner critic activity.
Mm-hmm.
And, they often say that your business is like a baby, or that you're birthing this new thing. And so of course it would, like where you're like, people say that with babies, it's like your heart is living outside of your body. Right. That's, a similar experience with your business and your ideas going out into the world, and you really can't control it.
Yes, that's so true. I hadn't ever thought about that. And they do say your business is your baby. And I've said it before. And I've also heard business leaders say, don't look at your business as your baby. Like, that's unhealthy. I've definitely heard that before. But I don't know about you, but like, that's impossible to not look at your business as your baby, or that next thing that you're launching as your baby. Like, I know, just like what you said, you are about to launch an online course, and that's your baby right now, right? And the closer that gets, the more you realize the positive and the negative implications that could come along with birthing that out into the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I on track there? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think in my situation, before I launched the podcast, I honestly, I guess maybe I was just pushing hard enough that I had that challenge in front of me. And so the challenge was keeping my focus on just launching the thing, and it was motivating me. So I didn't have time to think about, well, what if this goes bad, or what if this goes well? I didn't have any of those questions going on. I really didn't. But then once the challenge was gone and I didn't have that next challenge to almost distract me from my inner critic and keep me occupied over here, it allowed the inner critic to flood in. There was just this space in my life that hadn't yet been filled with that next thing. And so the inner critic came in. So that's one scenario. And then in your case, it sounds like the inner critic is already coming in as you're hustling to launch this thing, which I would bet that might be even more common. I don't know, but what?
Well, so I think that it's in some ways it's similar to your experience. So working and action is a good way. Like, the inner critic does get distracted. And so for me, actually, it's kind of similar. So I was like plugging along, writing the lessons. And then all the emails were done. And then there became a little bit more space. There became a little bit of a tight, I'm on a tight deadline. Mm-hmm. But also I'm dependent on my husband to do the next part of it. Mm-hmm. And so there actually did become a little bit more space.
Oh.
And I couldn't really taken action without him.
Right.
And so that was when my inner critic like fired up like crazy. And one thing that you can do, you know, when you hear the inner critic pop up is, one, acknowledge that he or she is there, but two, take action.
Yes.
You know, like when I feel vulnerable, you know, now I'm practicing saying the audios out loud. And just this morning, I'm like, so here, there's just so many different ways that we could go with this.
I know.
But so I'm sitting this morning and I'm like, okay, all right, you know, here's my time. I need to go and I need to just speak this lesson, just like rehearse it essentially. And one of my inner critic things is that it wants to distract me with something else. Like, so don't go there, like avoid it. Like procrastination can be inner critic energy. You know, it's like, oh, let's go to the coffee shop, you know? And then I'm like, I can make it was all of this happened within 2 seconds.
Yes.
I'm like, all I need to do right now is open my mouth and start reading this thing. And I did. And it dropped down.
Yeah. Shut
like,
that inner
she
critic
like,
up.
She like just relaxed, you know, like, okay, all right, we're moving forward here.
Right.
And so I think when you're keeping busy, the inner critic is quiet, which is why you see a culture addicted to busyness.
Ooh, that's a hard hitter. Okay. Talk more about that.
Yeah. Well, because who wants to be sitting home alone on their couch at 8 p.m.? That's space where the inner critic can come in.
Yes. Big time.
And so you need to distract with Instagram, with, you know, with social media, with texting friends, with being on the computer, with having something to watch.
Right.
So one of the biggest things you can do to build resiliency with your inner critic is to just sit and be with it. And to hear
tell me
it.
how. Yeah. Okay. So tell me how to.
So I imagine an inner critic a little bit like a 3-year-old. You know, like imagine that like two adults are sitting having a conversation and the child comes up and is like, mommy, mommy. And they're like, you know, kind of like yanking on the, like on your shirt kind of. They're going to keep doing it until you acknowledge that they need your attention. And so if you try to swat your inner critic away, it will get louder.
That's a good point.
And so what you can do is, and this is where the relationship kind of comes in, is acknowledge, you know, you want to say, I see you and I appreciate what you're doing here. And I'll listen for a minute and I understand. And like, thank you for trying to protect me. And I got this. I'm safe.
Right. Ooh, I like that because you just said it. It's like, because it's a part of you, you don't want to just ignore a part of you. That's almost like self-harm as opposed to self-help and helping yourself to, and bettering that relationship. Ooh, I had not thought about that situation. I kept thinking, okay, the answer is to just work through it, which is so typical of me. Like that is so my personality. But I'm definitely going to take that away from this conversation. I need to thank it and send it positive energy as opposed to shush and I will deal with this, right? Because that's only going to make it probably worse in the long run, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Okay.
Well, it's just going to get louder and louder until you like finally have like a meltdown.
Which I did when I was
me. I'm having some too. Yeah. It's a real treat.
It's,
you know?
Yeah. Oh man. And I can just imagine the listeners thinking they might be having their meltdown right this second, because I understand this conversation probably will trigger those feelings towards that inner critic and those things that the inner critic is telling them right now. Where I want to take this, you mentioned that procrastination can come up as a form of an inner critic. What other things what other almost symptoms of an inner critic may pop up? Now, I know, like for me, I think my subconscious recognizes things way before my conscious does sometimes. And I think that's why I was having those awful nightmares. So that was definitely happening. And then what else was happening? I was having like racing thoughts. Like I didn't feel like I could control the flow of my thought process. It was just running away and just rampant. And I didn't feel like I felt like I needed a nap just to calm my mind down. Like I could not figure out how to get, so I think might be inner critic symptoms.
Yep.
What else might be
so I
there?
imagine inner critic thoughts like a little hamster on a hamster wheel.
Yeah.
Like spinning so fast, can't keep up. It's like, and this thing, and you should worry about this thing, and then this other thing, and this other thing, and this other thing, and next thing you know, you're going to be homeless. And it's like, I got to tell you the like most horrible, horrific thing that could possibly happen here so I can get your attention so you will listen to me.
Yes. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the racing thoughts, and I imagine my inner critic, so my inner critic is Janice. So
right. You have a name for yours.
Yeah. Because it is a separate entity. It is a part of you and it is its own thing. And so giving it a name and a persona really helps you to separate from it. And then you can hear it and you're not at the effect of it anymore.
Right.
Because it's not the real you. And you can say, oh, like it has a place in your life. It's to protect you. And so you can hear and say, oh, I hear your warnings. Like I see you and we're all good. And so giving it a name and like a character. So Janice is a little lizard and
this is great.
She's so cute. I'll have to show you a picture. She's really cute.
Oh my gosh. I love this. And that makes so much sense to the reptilian lizard brain idea.
Yeah.
Is that kind of where that came from?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like, so, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and Martha Beck says, your inner lizard versus your inner wizard.
Okay.
So they have to like work together.
And I think, I could totally be getting this wrong, but I think it's Seth Godin that calls it the lizard brain.
Yeah.
Is it?
I mean, a lot of people do.
Or somebody,
a lot of people
maybe he was just
the
talking
lizard
about
brain.
it, and that's the first person I ever heard can talk about it like that. But okay, cool. So
I mean, it is your lizard reptilian brain. Yeah.
Right.
So Janice for me is like a cute little lizard, and she has like bright blue eyeshadow, and she's cute. But she sits on my shoulder right here, which is actually kind of funny because I have pain in like my neck and shoulder, which is very interesting. And so that's like a weird kind of thing, but I imagine her just like sitting there. Right. And that's where it's very heady, like you'll be in your head a lot.
Yes.
When you have inner critic energy going on versus when you can feel something in your gut and you know that it's right or wrong. Like in your intuition, it's deeper. Yes. It's more in your body. Right. Inner critic energy is going to be from here up, like from shoulders up, because it's all in your head. So that's why I imagine her kind of just like sitting here. And for me, it just, for some reason, it's always on this right side, just like,
Interesting.
And it's fast. She's got a fast pace.
Yeah. I understand that description of it being heady, because it's not quite like anxiety. I feel like anxiety here, like in my chest, right? And then like the good or intuition feelings are in the gut. But yes, inner critic is up here, big time, up here in the head. Okay. All right. And then are there, beyond the racing thoughts,
busyness,
sort of
well, actually, bolting, like if you want to bolt, like it was like, oh, go to a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Let's just get out of here.
Right. So that comes back to the
like
fight,
numbing.
Flight, or freeze situation.
Yeah.
So,
where you'll be paralyzed. You won't be able to do anything. Or you'll want to like run away.
Right.
Or I think the other one is like a frenzy, where you will feel like I have to do all of these things right this second.
Yes.
In business, actually, I mean, just in general, the inner critic is the voice of the shoulds.
Right.
So, you get emails from people that are like 10 things to do to grow your business now. Especially as a new business owner, like I actually had to just unsubscribe from a lot of like business building people that I was following because it just riled up my inner critic so much.
Yes.
With all the shoulds, I should be posting on Snapchat and I should do Instagram and I got to build up my email list and I have an online course and I got to get clients and I got to go to networking events and.
Right.
That is like the voice of the inner critic. It's the shoulds, like I should do this. It's what will so-and-so think. The inner critic loves to like project onto people that we respect.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just yesterday at a meetup. It was a Rising Tide Society meeting. And, I noticed this often happens, not just to me, but other people. When you get in a group of people and you start talking about any topic, honestly, any topic regarding business, it can so quickly, if everyone gets the floor to kind of talk about their perspective, if your inner critic isn't quite in check at that moment, I think you can walk away with feeling total overwhelm and a total loss of confidence in that you actually aren't doing what you need to. And I saw that happen yesterday. I think because we're talking about networking and then we get on Pinterest, then we just start talking about Pinterest and then we start talking about Instagram and then ways to support others and ways to say thanks. And it was all phenomenal conversation, but only when you could come to it in a confident place of, okay, there will be plenty of things happening in this conversation, but I should probably stay focused on that I'm doing everything that I can right now. I think your mindset going into it really, really dictates how you're going to walk out of that conversation. I don't know where I'm going with this.
Well, and I think in that, kind of reminding your inner critic before you go in that like there are a million ways to build business.
Yes.
And we are on the hunt for 3 to 5 tactics that are going to work for us.
Right. Yeah. 3 to 5. Right. It's not like you have to do all of that in one day. I feel that happen, and I see that happen with, I think, a lot of our groups or members in the private Facebook group of, feeling like I have so much to get done and I have to get it all done today. And then all of a sudden you've gotten nothing done because you've just been going back and forth. And would you say that could be potentially part of inner critic? Because in reality, you don't actually need to get everything done today. Like you could take 5 minutes to prioritize what actually needs to get done today and work through those 3 to 5 things as opposed to the 15 things that could probably get done in the next week.
Right. And, I see this with people in my full-time job all the time, actually, where because it feels good to get something done. Yeah. So it's just like a pinball machine. Bouncing back and forth from different things, like frenetic kind of energy.
Right.
And yeah.
There.
Yeah. I actually had that a little bit today. Working at my full-time job, I like went very deep in a project and like was so engaged, like so excited about this, love thinking about this thing, totally like in the zone. And then you come out of the zone and you're like, oh my God, what should I have been doing in that time? I haven't done anything. And you're like, wait, but like I was actually working in that time. Like, it's not like I was wasting time or not working. Like,
I do that
what's happening here?
I do that so bad. Wait, can we talk about that for a second? Because that is totally me. Because I love to I find my flow, and we talked about this a lot in season 1. I asked each podcast guest where they find their flow in their work. Like, what are they doing? Where are they at? When they put their head down and 5 hours later they look up and they're like, whoa, that was awesome, right? I find my flow when there's a new project or challenge. When I have a brand new client, that is my peak level right there. Like, I am the happiest when it's a brand new client and there's a new challenge ahead of us and we have nothing done yet. That's exciting to me. I love to look at the big picture and create the strategy and connect the dots. And so I will spend honestly hours diving in. This is even before I'm even hired by the client. This is just coming up with a proposal. I love creating the proposal because it's a brand new challenge. It's full of potential and I get sucked right in. And everybody has their place of flow. But then I lift my head up and I'm like, wait a second. There's still so many things that need to be done. Like, did I just waste all that time? No, because it felt great, and I got it done, but now I still have 10 other things on my list. So I definitely get that. What can we do? What can we do to either avoid or not avoid, but just like deal with that fretting over how we're spending our time?
Yeah, the fretting, that's such a good word. It's like that is inner critic energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that it makes sense for me. Like I said, the inner critic energy is in the morning. And I had this realization recently that I'm like, well, that makes sense from an evolutionary perspective because if I was sleeping out in the forest and there were tigers and predators and stuff, when you wake up, you need to instantly get your bearings and know what the danger is.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't being in the flow kind of like being asleep?
Yes.
Because all of your surroundings melt away.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when you come back up to consciousness, you need to know what the threats are instantly.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right?
Wow. So see, when I feel like when you can understand something, we're all business owners, so we get the idea of the inner critic, and we definitely deal with it, I'm sure, on an hourly basis.
Oh,
but
yeah.
when you can dive in deep like this and understand like where the root cause is and why it exists, I think it becomes so much more containable and controllable.
Yeah.
And it doesn't just like whack you off your direction. You're just like, okay, I see you. I get what you're trying to do. Thanks. But
Yep.
I'm going to just keep going, that makes
well, and then you can
so
watch it, and when you become an observer of it,
mm-hmm.
you are not a victim of it.
Yes.
So you can just watch it and say, oh, hi, you're here. Okay. I'll watch you doing your little frenzy thing. You're fretting and, okay, I'll hear, it's imagine like your inner critic is like your assistant
mm-hmm. and
you've been in a 5-hour meeting. Of course, the second you come out of the meeting, they're gonna be like, oh my God, and Brit, here's this thing, and this person called, and you gotta call, and blah, blah, blah. Like they just want to get everything out to you. Like they want you to know all of the information that like you might have missed.
Yes.
It's kind of like that. And then you can just kind of watch it.
Do you know what I love so much about so far in this conversation is that every time you've given us a picture of what your inner critic could look like to you, it's been something honestly okay. Like it's a positive picture. It's not, to me, when I first went into this, if I could show you what my inner critic looked like, it would have been kind of a picture of someone that I used to work with that was hypercritical of everything I ever did. And I never had a good relationship with that person. Right? I continue to think about that person and be like, ugh, I don't want anything to do with that person anymore, And so And so now I'm reframing. Obviously, that's a bad relationship I had in my real life, and a bad relationship I had with a part of me being my inner critic. And every time you've explained this person or this thing in your life, it's been something totally okay. Like the little kid. Well, yeah, the little kid needs attention. Like, well, yeah, that's what he's going to do. And the lizard, she's not terrible. She's got like blue eyeshadow and kind of funny looking, not awful. And then this assistant that, she's just doing her job kind of thing. That's empowering. And that's a really great tangible, especially as creatives, we love to understand the tangible way and, I don't know, the tangible thing about this theoretical idea. And I think that's going to be my biggest takeaway, is that it's not something to have to fear or have a negative feeling towards. We've got to figure out how to create positive feelings towards this inner critic. Because I think that's the only way that we can honestly thrive amidst knowing that we're going to always have an inner critic. Am I on the right track there? Okay.
Yeah. And what this is bringing up for me now is have you heard of the victim triangle or the drama triangle?
No, tell me about that.
Okay, I love this. So the victim triangle or the drama triangle, if you're in it, you're playing one of three roles: the victim, the victimizer, or the rescuer.
Okay.
And if you are in the drama triangle with your inner critic,
mm-hmm.
which you could be,
mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people are, and you are likely going to be the victim, and the inner critic would be the victimizer.
Right.
And if you're in this triangle, like you're just stuck, you just keep bouncing around.
Mm-hmm.
And you might look for somebody to rescue you. So like sometimes if I'm in like an inner critic place, like I'll want my husband to jump in and like save me.
Yeah.
From this pain.
Mm-hmm.
Or you'll want to hire a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Or somebody in your business to help you, like a VA that's going to like lift all of this stuff off of your plate and like rescue you.
Mm.
And while that can feel good, the rescuer could become the victimizer, or you could become a victim to the rescuer.
Mm. Okay.
So a coach explained this to me recently. She gave this example where her little sister was dating this guy who was like no good for her. So she's the victim. And then the coach and the coach's like other siblings went down to like rescue her from
mm-hmm.
the situation and like to pull her out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the sister actually didn't like that and was like, you're pulling me away from him. And so then they, in their rescuer role, they became the victim role or the victimizer role.
Yeah.
The victimizer.
Mm-hmm.
And then who wants to be the victimizer? So then they kind of became the victims, and then you just keep going around and around.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can be in the victim triangle with your inner critic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the more like catabolic energy, mm-hmm. of like, woe is me, like hating against it and like
mm-hmm.
pushing against it, resisting it. Because it does. I mean, it really feels bad.
Yeah.
I imagine that you were feeling pretty shitty.
Yeah. For 3 days straight. Like I couldn't move anything forward, and everything that I thought I was moving forward, I had to take all back because it was just not my best work. Yeah. Just awful.
Because it can just feel really mean. And if you don't separate yourself, then you are a victim to it.
Yep.
Because you're just hearing those thoughts over and over and over again, and you literally can't think any other thought.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another triangle that you could be in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that thinking of your inner critic as somebody who wants to help and has your best interest at heart, moves you up into this higher triangle. So the drama triangle is a downward facing triangle where the victim is the bottom point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like losing my train of thought on what and I don't think it's in this notebook. I think it's somewhere else. I can't remember what the name of the other triangle is. The empowerment triangle. That's it.
Got it. Okay.
So you can be in the drama triangle or you can be in the empowerment triangle.
Mm-hmm.
The empowerment triangle, the victim, it flips. So the victim becomes the creator.
Okay.
The rescuer becomes the coach or facilitator. And the victimizer becomes the challenger.
Okay. All right. I like it.
And so if you move into that triangle, if you're thinking of your inner critic as somebody who's there to help you,
mm-hmm.
they can fall into either the coach role or the challenger role.
Mm-hmm.
And either way, like, you're empowered.
Right.
Because you're the creator and they're there to support you, either to challenge you to, to create better, or, to rethink, or to, maybe like poke holes
mm-hmm.
in what you're doing, to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're the coach facilitator, where they're just like, and did you think about this thing? And did you think about this thing? And did you think about this thing?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they can be a little bit misguided, like it's just like, oh, I really like you, but you're just such a little worrywart.
Yeah.
And like, you don't think anything of it. You don't take it personally.
Right.
You're not a victim to it.
Right.
And so that's why I love thinking of the inner critic as like, it has your best interest at heart.
Mm-hmm.
And then you move into the creator role, which as creative entrepreneurs, that's all we're about, is creating something.
Right. A couple things here. So first of all, as a coach, right? As a coach, someone that coaches people through marketing strategy, I see where this is huge for my profession, because obviously I want to fit into that triangle as a coach and not as a rescuer.
Yes.
Because if I come in, same as you. If I come in acting like, or being seen as the rescuer, we're still going to be in the drama triangle no matter what we do. So we have to, if we do find, if a listener is listening and they are a coach right now, or someone that comes in as a coach facilitator, someone that's, again, coaching someone through a process, I think we all need to be so cognizant of, are we being a coach or are we being a rescuer? And if we are being a rescuer, that could flip really quickly in a bad direction. And that is not the triangle we want to be in. So that is so powerful. And as the creator, now I'm going to step out of the coach role and say, okay, I'm the business owner, I'm the creator. If I'm going to bring in help, a facilitator, a coach, I would imagine the only way that I'm going to get the most value I can possibly get out of that coach is if I have a positive relationship with my inner critic and see them as simply the challenger, so I can continue to be empowered by my coach. If I'm just being victimized and back and, which, okay, we probably flip, because we're all human. We're going to flip back and forth between the drama and the empowerment triangle. It's not like we always have to be empowered, because that's just not reality. But if we can be aware of the two different triangles, I would imagine that we can better see which one we're in, and then do the necessary actions to get us into empowerment if we're not, so we can continue getting the most out of the person that is in the coach role.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you can't put the pressure on them to save you.
Right.
Yeah,
that's like, not their
you're
job.
Like, oh, I need to hire this person because I want them to save me.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to save me from my inner critic energy.
Yeah.
It's not going to work out for anybody.
Right. And if you do happen to do that, you better be doing the work to get a positive relationship back with your inner critic, because you're just not going to get what you can out of that person you think is there to save you. That's just not gonna, right. That's gonna be a rough go. Okay. All right. I would love to wrap this up on knowing where any resources that you have to give our listeners to dive into this topic a little farther, where can they go? What can they read, listen to, watch, to learn more about this, so that maybe they can create a more positive relationship with their inner critic?
So my number one resource is the book Playing Big, by Tara Mohr.
Okay.
Mohr. She outlines the best list that I've seen on the inner critic and like its messages.
Okay.
And so that you can pinpoint them more.
Right.
The other thing that you can do is just observe it. And you're going to get the most bang for your buck by just observing your own patterns.
Yeah.
And talking about them. Right.
Yes.
So those are
it's all going to come up in a little different way, probably, depending on you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then name your inner critic.
Yes.
And try to build a relationship of love with it that's not in the victim triangle.
Right. Okay.
And become an observer. Become an observer of it, because that gives you distance.
Wow. This is, I knew this was going to be a good conversation, because when we get on calls with each other, it's always a good conversation, but this is just like mind blown. This took an entirely different route, not entirely, but a route that I feel so good about, because I know I learned a lot, and I'm taking everything that you just listed off. I'm like, okay, yes, those are like some checkpoints that I would like to write down and work through for myself. So thank you. I cannot thank you enough. Can you tell the listeners before we go where they can find you online? Now, they can, obviously, if they haven't listened to your first interview, they can go back to episode 9 and listen into that. But where can they find you online if they want to reach out, send some love, and see what Jo's up to?
So I'm on Instagram at Joanna_Platt, Platt. My website is joanna-platt.com. And you can find me. I have a podcast called Love Always Jo, and it's on my list actually to do a podcast about my inner critic, Janice. And called Have You Met Janice? And talking about that more. So, and then I talk in my course Engaged, there is a lesson on the inner critic and how the inner critic plays out in marriage.
Yes. Yeah, we didn't really speak a whole lot about that in this interview, but yes, everyone should know that Jo has, we've been working together to launch her first online course. It's called Engaged, and it's for premarital couples or newly married couples to plan for their marriage as they're planning for their wedding. And I love that. and inner critic, it's part of you no matter where you go. So it's not just showing up in business, but it's showing up in life and other relationships and your marriage, your everything, everywhere. And so I love that you've put that in there as part of your course, something that I don't necessarily think most people would even consider needing to think about and talk about with their spouse or significant other. So awesome work, Jo. Thank you so much for being on the podcast again. You guys, you heard her. Go check her out. Send her some love, fittingly, for her industry, and hop into our private Facebook group to hear even more from Jo over the next few days. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast. Keep the conversation going by visiting marketinginyogapants.com/Facebook where you'll get to join that private Facebook group I've been talking so much about. There, you'll get to chat with our podcast guests, yeah, they're in there too, and all of the other brilliant creative business owners. We're connecting, we're meeting our soul sisters, and we're building our businesses, all while in yoga pants. So come hang out with us. Again, visit marketinginyogapants.com/Facebook to get in. And one more thing. If you dig this podcast, would you be awesome and share it with someone? This entire Marketing in Yoga Pants movement is nothing without its community. So please share. And if you're really feeling the love right now, jump into iTunes. You're probably already there if you're listening to this right now. And leave us a rating and review. The more of those we rack up, the more the podcast will be found by ladies like you, and the stronger this community becomes. This episode was edited and produced by the Podcast Engineers. They're pretty great, so go find them at podcastengineers.com. This episode was also brought to you by my online marketing agency, Jam Marketing Group, and you can find us at jammarketinggroup.co. That's all for now. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you back here next week on the Marketing in Yoga Pants podcast. Love ya. Bye.